All right, so Mercy handed this in last week, and she's done, I just took a look at what she handed in this week. She's done quite a lot of upkeep. So a couple of things. So she figured out the tempo, which she's got at 66.1475, but notice all this space here. So basically all of these, make sure that these are all, now these are the two-step for undergraduates, right? Now there's a little problem with these, and I was hoping that somebody would figure it out. But what you could see here is that it's almost like there's some blank space here at the end of this. So let's figure out our tempo. And let's play this back here, and let's listen to see if it smoothly loops. You hear that? How it sort of jumps there? It's not a smooth loop. You have to figure out what the problem is. And so when you zoom in and you go to the end, you'll see that there's blank space here. Right? And you can, if you make the waveforms bigger, you can see all of them virtually have this blank space here. So what I would do is I'm going to put this right here, right? I'm going to put this right here. I'm going to separate that out, Command E, and then I'm going to highlight this and play it back and see if that fixes this. There you go, right? You hear the difference between those two? When it gets to the end of the loop, it smoothly continues and goes around, right? So this is the original. Listen to what happens at the end when it goes back to the beginning. You'll hear it almost skips. You hear that? It's almost like a skip on a record player. But if I just highlight the part that I just edited and play it back, it's nice and smooth. Okay, so what you're going to do for all of these is I'm going to highlight this one, right? I separated that out, and I'm just going to hold the Shift key down and select all of these and then delete that bit, right? And that should give me a nice smooth loop on all of these. So let's listen to the guitar and see how that loops. Oops, it'd be nice to select the area. Excuse me. You know, see how that's a beautiful loop? It's just looping, cycling around perfectly. Okay, so now we need to find our tempo. Command-Shift-I, and that's 3. And boom, there you have it. That's our tempo, 67.5, and then hit OK, and that gets locked in. And then you can work with this. Now, when you're looking at something like this, right? Let me play everything together. Right? So, okay, that's a lot of stuff playing right at the beginning. So, a couple of things. You notice that the organ has some separated notes, and as does the bass. So, I'm going to put the bass down at the bottom because that's going to be near where the drums are. I'm going to put the strings up at the top, and then the piano is going to be above the organ and the second piano. So there's two pianos, right? Okay, so that's different than this. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what the answer is, but let's see. Take a listen. So is that an acoustic piano?
No.
No, right? It's an electric piano. There are many kinds of electric pianos, right? But the two main electric pianos historically were the Rhodes, the Fender Rhodes, and the Wurlitzer. And the Wurlitzer went through many configurations in the mid-50s to late 50s until about the early 70s. Like Ray Charles famously played one on What I Say, which I believe was something like a 120. And then there was the 141, and then the 145, the 145B, and then the 200, then the 206. All of them are just a little bit different, right? But they all had this sort of woody, hollowish kind of sound, like this sort of does. This is the Wurlitzer, and this is the Rhodes. Okay, so you have this bit here, right? Whoops, excuse me. And there's a lot of information going on. So you have to start arranging this stuff, right? Oh, another thing that she did was very good is that she did some gain staging and brought down the audio level of all of these by -7 dB so that when they were all playing, it wasn't distorting. But I'm going to consolidate these and they'll become their own audio file that I can't drag out and undo the good loop we've got now. So Option Shift 3. And now we're good to go. And then I'm going to make these all polyphonic elastic audio. And I really want you guys to use elastic audio on this. I don't want you to use the time stretch pitch because there's more that you can do with that. All right. So now we've got all this stuff and we can do. Let me just show you something really cool. We'll see how this works. So I'm going from 35 beats a minute up to the 66.5 temp, whatever the tempo is. Right, so you see that you can do stuff where the tempo accelerates, and that's not great for the entire bit, but what if you did something like this, right? So I'm going to mute tracks that I don't want to use. So I'm going to leave the guitar. So now all I have is... And I could do a little acceleration here at the beginning. And that might be a little bit too much. So, you might want to just double check first, though, about our analysis. Yeah, that looks good. That doesn't look to be too many. Okay. So go to waveform. All right. So we'll start off a little bit slower and speed up. Now, the other thing that you can do that's kind of cool is you can do some editing. So I'm going to delete that little bit there, right? What's nice is that there's no click at the end of that. So if you do some edit like that and there's a little click at the end, the way that you fix that is to just zoom in and just highlight a little area and make a little fade, and that'll get rid of that click. Okay, so I'm going to close this for the time being, and I'm going to add Command-Shift-N to stereo augs inputs, right? And we've gone over this a little bit. And I'm going to color code these. It's the same color. And the first one's going to be reverb. And the next one's going to be delay. Delay, delay, delay. And then I'm going to insert deverb, which is the reverb I want you to use for right now because it's easier for me to explain the parameters, which I'm going to do. And I want you to use mod delay 3, which it's also I recommend using because I can also explain the parameters. Now, we have to assign some inputs for these. Make sure they're solo safed. If they're not solo safed, if the solo looks regularly like it normally would, just hit Command and click on it, and then it gets grayed out. So I'm going to assign bus 1 and 2, and I'm going to assign bus 3 and 4. I'm going to make sure that my sends column is active. Okay. I want this note here to echo on boom ba doom ba 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 ba, something like that, right? I think that'd be kind of a cool effect. I'm going to highlight this area here so I can hear the sound and hear what the echo is going to be afterwards. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my sends column, and I'm going to go, the delay is on bus 3 and 4, and a mixer comes up, and then I'm going to send a copy of the signal. I'm going to do a generous amount. I'm going to bring it up maybe to either, minus to 5 or to 0. These actually below 0 is minus. They just don't put the minus there. Just there's more than we need, than we're going to use. So I'll play this back. So it plays ba-da, right? It plays one time. Okay, let me show you the controls on the delay. Now, those of you that have taken digital recording and comp 2, this is a review for you because we had a very extensive, detailed look at delay and reverb. So this will be a good review for all of you. Okay. So this is a stereo delay. And if we look across the top, we see input, left delay, left modulation. We're not going to worry about modulation right now. We see right delay and we see right modulation. We're not going to worry about that. We see here input. This will give you the level of the signal going in. And this is the output. This will give you the level of the signal going out. The level of your signal going out should never be above 0 where it's distorting. If it does, you back down the fader here. Let's look at the controls on the left. So this first one says link, right? What that does is it lets you mirror whatever parameter change you do on the left side will be echoed or mirrored on the right side. So if I turn this on and you see the left delay is set at 250 milliseconds, when I move this up, you'll see the right delay also move. See that? So the delay is the amount of time it takes until the sound is repeated. The amount of time it takes, so the sound goes through the delay, the dry sound comes out. You'll hear the dry sound in the first track. You send a copy of the audio into the delay. The delay time is how many milliseconds or seconds it takes for the sound to come out of the delay machine. Feedback. We're only going to worry about positive numbers. Feedback is the number of echoes. So a feedback of 0 will be 1 echo. Ba, ba. The higher the number, the more echoes. So if you have a feedback of 5, it may be 5%, it may be something like ba, 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 something like that. Ba, 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 ba. The higher up, ba, 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 ba. More echoes. And the echoes should tail off the further away it gets from the original sound. Over here on the right is an LPF, which stands for low pass filter. And you see how these are mirroring each other. This will attenuate or bring the volume down of frequencies above 5,010 hertz or whatever you set it to. And this is very good for making your echoes sound distinct from the original sound. So in other words, this will make a carbon copy of your sound and just play it back. And that's what a digital delay typically does. But let's say you're using an analog delay or a bucket brigade delay or a tape delay. The sound's going to get degraded a little bit by the circuitry. When this is on, that means the delay will stay synchronized with the conductor track, with the metronome. And what's cool about this is that you can then select rhythmic values. So you'll notice they've got 16th, eighth, quarter, half note, whole note, triplet, and dotted rhythms. So if you wanted an eighth note triplet, you would click on this, and then you would click on the 3. And I'm going to click on the whole note soon and watch the number here and watch how these move. So I'll click on the whole note now. And you see that? But it's still a triplet, so you have to turn the triplet off. And that moves around, and an eighth note, and a dotted eighth note is there. So I'm going to play the sound with a feedback of 0, and then we'll hear we'll hear an eighth note, right? Then we'll hear a quarter note, a half note, right? And then a 16th note will be much quicker. So let's say we do an eighth note triplet, and then we turn the low pass filter to cut some of those frequencies, the high frequencies. And then we turn our feedback up to about 20. Right? So that's pretty cool. So if I wanted to make it sound more lo-fi, I would simply get rid of some more high frequencies. So if I play this now, you're going to hear echoes happening all the time. Right? If I only want the echoes to happen here, I need to automate this fader, have it move automatically. And the way you do that is to click on the waveform, right? This is the track view selector. And you notice now you have a send A like submenu, and you just bring the level up. And if I bring this down, you'll see this line moving. See that? It moves down. So what you can do is you can use your pencil tool. And I would not suggest making like dramatic changes, like doing something like, something like this, like that. You would want the change. You could also use the grabber, the change to be a little bit more gradual so it doesn't click when it comes on. So now I'm going to play it from the beginning, and you're going to hear there's no delay. Right? So that's too much. So I'm going to bring the volume down. Right? So that's pretty cool. So that could be like your introduction. And then what you can do is, and then I'm going to bring the volume down, right? Just like that. So if I bring my fader up here, you can watch that the fader will start to move. And then back down. So that's pretty cool. And then there's the bass, right? Let me unmute the bass. So that's Command M, and let me listen to this. I'm going to duplicate this a few times. And I'm going to mute all the rest of these for right now. I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to delete the rest of this. So I'm going to see where that stop is. So it's right here, right? That comes in a little bit abruptly, right? But what we can do is we can fade that note in. And we can, since we're in polyphonic, we can go to our TCE. And we can make this a little bit longer. It's going to sound a little weird. Make it a little longer, and then we'll fade it out. Softer, and have it fade in a little bit longer. That should be a little bit longer still. Okay, so now what we can also do is we can start to think about adding some space. So this is Reverb. This is an okay reverb. It's perfectly good for teaching because it's very easy. Everything is laid out very well. Oh, the other thing too about the mod delay, when it's used as a send, like we're using it here, this is the dry wet mix. It's always going to be 100% wet. There are times when I use it as an insert in a track, and then you would bring this way, way, way down to like maybe somewhere between 8 and 12% is typically really more than enough. But we're not doing that right at this particular moment. So let's talk about reverb for a second. So this is what's called an algorithmic reverb, which means that it's using math, right, basically to simulate spaces. It's using lots of very tight, closely combined echoes to give the impression of an acoustic space. There's another type of reverb that's commonly used called convolution reverb, which uses things that are called impulse responses. So what impulse responses are actual recordings of a space. They're specialized recordings of a space, and they take those recordings and they use that with this convolution process in order to create an acoustic environment that simulates the space that you recorded. So if we took an impulse response of Lafrac Hall, we can have a reverb that sounds like the reverb in Lafrac Hall from the position that the mic is relative to where the sound source is. So in other words, if the sound source is at the front of the stage and the microphone is at the 10th row, the 10th aisle, the 10th row, that's the kind of reverb you'd hear. If the microphone was back at the 30th row, you'd hear more reverb. If it was at the last row, it would be even a bigger space. And so, it's all putting somebody in the actual physical space. It's really, I use it a lot. It's really a great tool, but we're going to learn algorithmic reverb. So it has a gain, and typically you're going to make sure the gain is at 0 dB no matter what you do. It has these algorithms here. And the only ones that we need to concern ourselves with are not all of these. We're not going to learn all of these. Is Hall, plate, and room. There's two kinds of room. They're both just a little bit different sounding. So Hall is something like Lafrac Hall or Carnegie Hall. It's a big cavernous space typically used for long reverbs. A plate is an actual mechanical device that simulated reverb. This is a plate reverb, right? This is a piece of metal sheet. It's suspended. It has, these things are transducers, microphones. You send in signal from your audio source into one of these. It excites this metal sheet, which starts to vibrate. And then the other one picks up that vibration. It's a microphone and sends it back to your mixing console or back into your wherever your destination is. Excuse me. And these were made. I believe these were first made in the 1950s. This little knob here gets you closer or further away from the plate with your input and output, which changes the reverb time. Right, so this is, Waves makes this Abbey Road's plates. This is based on the plates in Abbey Road Studios. And, right, so by moving this knob here, you could simulate this damper moving closer and further away from the plate. Most reverbs have a plate simulation. Hall is if you have symphonic stuff or you want something to sound big and massive and far away. A plate is very versatile. You can use it on percussion, drums. You can use it on guitar. You can use it on vocals. You can use it on piano. You can use it on a lot of sources. It has a very distinctive sound. And a room, it just gives you a little ambience like you're in a room, like a classroom or something like that. You have here really quick ways to choose decay time. And then you have this knob here where you can do the same thing. The decay time is the amount of time it takes for the reverb to completely fade out to having no volume at all. The pre-delay gives you a sense of, you hear the sound and then the reverb starts. So imagine you're in a big stadium and you hear like a starter's pistol for a race. You hear the acoustic sound of the pistol, and then you'll hear the echo of it. afterwards, right? So that's pre-delay. It has a high frequency cut, which is like a low pass filter, but it's specifically for the high frequencies. And it does have an additional low pass filter. And then diffusion is how many things are actually in the room. How dense are all the things that get reflected off? How does it absorb the reverb? It makes the sound denser or less denser. So let's take a look at these. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new instrument just for right now. And then I'm going to put in expand 2. And I'm just going to put in a snare drum. Okay, so that's a very high-pitched snare drum. That's kind of like the Police, the band The Police. Okay, so I'm going to take a copy of the audio and I'm going to send it through bus 1 and 2. So this is the sound of the snare. And I've got, I'm just going to put in a small hall, which is 1.4 seconds, right? And you'll hear that there's... Now, if I make a medium hall, bring that up. Now, listen to what happens with pre-delay. So I'm going to bring that way up. So, you know, there is a thing that you can do with reverb that's kind of cool. So if you go and find something called a delay time calculator, right? You choose your BPM. So let's say you're at 120 beats a minute, right? An eighth note is 250 milliseconds. So let me go way over here and measure 21. And let me put in a tempo of 120 beats a minute. And let me just 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And let's just, for fun, let me just make sure that that's perfectly in time. Right? So now let me move this pre-delay to 250 milliseconds. Hold on a second. Great. And bring the level down. So you see how you can almost create a reverb that's rhythmic. Right? And that's different than an echo because it lasts longer than the sound. This drum is very quick attack and decay. And then if you bring down, and then if you make it, you know, I'm making this 300 milliseconds, the reverb is going to be actually for about an eighth note. If I make it for 500 milliseconds, it'll, 0.5 seconds, it'll be a quarter note. So you could do all sorts of cool things with that, but let's get this back to 0. So that's a hall, and then let's try a plate. Okay, so listen to the sound of the plate. The timbre. And then the hall. Plate. Hall. So anybody describe in adjectives the difference in sound between the hall and the plate? Which one is brighter? Which one is darker? The sound. We'll listen again. Listen again. So we'll start with the hall. Plate. Hall. Plate. Anybody venture to say?
The hall is darker and the plate's brighter.
Correct. Good, Andrew. Okay, so we can make the plate, we don't have to make the plate as big. Now you see how nicely that blends in with the snare drum? Makes the snare drum sound fatter and bigger. I'm going to bypass it. And that's at about 888 milliseconds. Now we can make that darker by using a high frequency cut. Bring that way down. See that, how dark that is now? Now, if we do no diffusion, well, let's go back to the hall and we'll play around with the diffusion with the hall because it'll be more apparent. So you see no diffusion, right? You're hearing like a rolled sound. I'll bring the diffusion up and that will smoothen out. So I'm just playing around with the diffusion. Okay, great. So let me mute this for now. And I typically don't put a lot of reverb on a bass instrument, right? But I've got a hall and I've got it set to about 2.3 seconds. So I'm going to automate reverb on the bass and see what that sounds like. So level, I'm going to bring this up here and then I'm going to bring it down so that there's no reverb when the groove starts. Let me solo this. A little bit higher. And you'll notice that there's a number right here, lets you know the level. You see that right over here? So I'm going to get that up to 0 or close to 0. So that's kind of cool. So you could, that's like a way that you can play around with the intro to that. Now let me delete all that. Let me put this at about 70. All right, and let me delete all this and let me use my regular standard. And so let's just say that we're gonna do some arranging of this really quickly, right? I'm gonna delete this. Okay, so we're gonna start out with. Oh, let's turn this off. We'll turn it off by taking that out. Yes, we will do that. Okay. So that's really fast. So I'm going to slow that down. I'm going to duplicate that, right? I'm going to duplicate that and I'm going to unmute that. And then I am going to just have the beginning of that and delete the rest. And then So that's the first two measures. And then what if I take the second measure and play it on the other one? And then what if we duplicated that, and then we unmuted the bass here, and we just had the bass play the long notes? Or maybe we'll keep the last couple of notes at the end in. And let's add some drums. Now, I'm going to put in a different drum machine. I'm going to use something called Boom. And I want to go over this really quickly. This shouldn't be that difficult for you to learn. We learned how to make a drum grid editor. Same thing right here. Okay? So I'm going to clear this pattern. This is C3. So if I play this instrument, if I play middle C, we're going to get this pattern here. Right? If I play C sharp 3, we'll get another pattern. D. And notice that this is lit here. So you have 16 different patterns you can store in here. And they've got different drum kits. They've got urban. And notice that if I play, and Daniel, there shouldn't be any additional reverb on my voice right now. We're on the side camera. Is that correct? No, the side camera's off.
Yeah, that's fine.
There we go. So if I can't see it over there. Let's go to this camera here. That's off also. So if I play notes down here, it's playing the individual instruments. If I get up here, it's playing the patterns. Over here is our mixer, and you'll notice that each one of these has a different instrument. So I could have the urban kit here, but I could have a different kick. This is the snare. I could have a different snare. There's my rim shot. I like that. Here's a clap. That's fine. Close hi-hat, open hi-hat. Those are all fine. I am going to clear this pattern. I'm going to go back to C1. I'm going to clear this pattern. Right? And there's two ways of inputting notes here. You could take your mouse and just click, right? And you'll notice that they have quarter notes are a different color. So if I were to play C3, you're going to hear just quarter notes. Right? Let me go back in. And if I wanted to, then, and you can also do dynamics. So notice how bright that is. If I click again on any of these lit dots, the brightness is going to change. Whoops. So it gets a little less bright. Whoops, sorry, excuse me. And that's barely lit, so that's softer. So, and then off. So it's got 3 levels of dynamics that you can program in. So that's one way that you can do that. The other way is that you can go to pattern edit right here, and you can, I'm sorry, zooming in and out. I hope I'm not making anybody nauseous. You can select your instrument, and then you'll see here that you've got 16 for 16th notes in 4/4 time. And you'll see that each one of these is lit corresponds to this. So let's say I wanted to make my bass drum pattern a little different, right? Oh, that's not what I want. So I've got bump, dump, bump, bum, bump, right? And this also has 3 levels of dynamics. So let me erase that. Let me go back to 4 quarter notes for right now. And so let's say I wanted to do a closed hi-hat. I'm just going to do offbeat eighth notes. Right, so let's start here. I'm going to, I've got this, I should name this boom. So I didn't get right at the beginning of the bar. Right, so I can go, I like that drum beat, right? I can copy that pattern. And then if I select one of these blinking lights, so this would be C#1, I could paste it right in there. Notice it's pasted into C#3, I mean. And so then I can, you know, play around with that so that I can now go to my MIDI editor for boom. And then I can duplicate that, and then I can move that up a half step, and now I've got 2 different drum patterns. Right? Or I could change, so that's, you know, and then up here you've got your panning. So if I wanted my closed hi-hat all the way to the right, I could do that, or anywhere in between. And let's say I've got these tom-toms. I can pan the high tom a little to the left, the low tom a little bit to the right. Crash is over on the left. The ride, I can pan a little bit to the right. Keep the snare, the rim, and the clap in the center. Now, this is kind of cool, the tune and the decay. So let me play the bass drum. I can make that really low-pitched, which is kind of cool. Really snappy. I can also make it really tight by changing the decay. And you can automate this. I'll show you that another time. This is plenty of stuff to learn. So, you know, you can use boom on this as well as your regular drum programming. Just gives you a different option. All right, so let me duplicate this again. And then what else do we got? So then we've got the organ, right? So let's take this and let's move this here and unmute this. And let's duplicate this again. So I think I'm going to keep that first drum pattern. And I'm just going to duplicate that twice. So now I've got something like this. And then you don't need the end here. That's kind of cool. And okay, so that organ sounds cool, but what if I wanted to make it a little bit wetter? I could put some of that reverb on there, certainly. Right? So you see how, like, in a matter of 20 minutes, I'm already getting... Plate sounds less hollow. Yes, Andrew, that's good. Hall is darker. I see. I'm sorry. I didn't see that you guys wrote that into the chat. I apologize for that. That is all correct. Every one of those. So you see, like in just a few minutes, I'm already putting together a nice arrangement of this track. And, you know, I'm using certain things. Now, you could also do something that's really cool. So let's say that I take this, right? And let's say I go, let's see. Let me go back to here and drag this back out. So let's say I duplicate this, right? Now, I could delete this. And I could take this, I could leave this last lick in there if I want. Or actually, let's do this. I'm just going to delete everything up until 1 octave lower. right? So now I've done a little. So this is playing. And then I have that line doubled. And then I can on the lower one, I could also add some delay to that, right? So you see how it's just a matter of using your imagination. So that's kind of cool, actually. Right? And maybe I'll add a little bit more feedback on the delay. Yeah, so that's kind of cool. We don't need this right now. Maybe we'll use that later. And then maybe here, starting here, right, what we'll do is we'll copy this and then we'll paste this here and it gets onto D3, right? And so maybe what I'll do now is I'll start adding we'll do 16th notes maybe, right? But what I'm going to do is I can go down to part edit here and I could work on it. It's a little easier to see. I can double click on all the odd numbers, right? So these are all the eighth notes. And then that should make this and then what I can do is I could pick snare drum. No, I don't like that at all. So let me get rid of those. I can make my bass drum be eighth notes. So we're getting into like a disco feel here, right? So if I go back to my MIDI editor, I can duplicate that a few times. One more time. And then I can select all these and then just go up 2 steps. Let's get that bass happening here. The full bass. And then maybe we'll use this Wurlitzer piano in its full incarnation here. And I'm going to copy this organ and I'm going to paste it here. And I'm going to make sure I'm on the regular trim tool, right? And then I'm going to delete this. Right? Just, you know, so you can see that I'm just, I'm taking my, think of yourself as like a sculptor, right? Or somebody who's making like you're picking up a bunch of objects and you bring them into your studio and you arrange them around. I've talked about this in digital recording and composition too, where you're creating an assemblage. You've got all your materials, and how do you organize your materials in a way that's going to come out as an arrangement, and then you're going to add some MIDI instruments to this as well. I've got a drums here. I might add some other stuff. I might not use the strings. I might use my own strings, right? So all this stuff is up to your imagination. And this is the undergraduate's assignment. If the graduate students want to use some of this material, you can. And undergraduates, if you want to add Marvin Gaye to this, or Bob Marley or Stevie Wonder vocal thing to this, please just use your creativity. Do something really interesting that you can be proud of, right? Okay. So now I've got this copied onto this track here, right? Let me get my piano up here for a second. Let's go stereo, track presets, Avid, and we'll just put Mini Grand in here. And I'm going to use Mini Grand so that I can figure out what this line is right here. Right? So it's E flat, C, G, E flat. So we could actually have parallel fifths there, which would be kind of cool. Right? So if I take this, so a fifth, right? A fifth is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stemitones. So I'm going to Command T, Option T. 0 octaves and 7 semitones. Oh, we've got the delay on there, so we have to turn the delay down. It's messing me up. So we'll just add another automation point. So yeah, so we see how that's like. Why not? Whoops, one more time. All right, so I've already added, now I've added a little bluesy piano figure, Bob James kind of a thing. Okay, let me just edit that end. All right, let's get rid of this schmutz here and just drag those out a little bit. Add another little piano part to that. Why not? Cool. So now I've got this boom pattern here, right? I'm going to copy that and I'm going to put that on 4, which will put it, oops. I'm going to copy, no, actually not. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it onto 4 and, whoops. I'm going to just add on the snare, right? I'm going to, every other kick drum, I'm going to duplicate. So that'll give us, so let's record, enable this. Right, so we've got a typical dance beat. All right, so let's go here and let's edit this. And then we'll duplicate this and then it'll go up a half step. And let's duplicate that 4 times. Oh, right. So then, so what if right now I got these strings right here? Okay, you can hear that they were played on a keyboard, right? Now, the reason for that is there's no release on the sound. So we can't really fix that completely, but we can mask that sound. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drench it in reverb, right? Second, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to volume, right? I'm going to do some volume automation with the pencil. And I'm going to use the line tool. So, and I'm going to go to slip. So what I want to do is I want to fade in a little bit. And then just fade down on that and then back up and in. So that'll cover a little bit of that. The other thing you can do is you can edit this, right? So you can delete that out. And you can fade out like this. And then you'll have to do a nice fade in here. Okay, so let's take a listen to this in context with everything else. And I'm going to add a little delay to that also, right? Just to cover up the stiffness of my, I wouldn't typically put it on well-played strings, but it's stiff, right? I want to try to sort of like diffuse the sound a little bit. See how much better that sounds? Now, the other thing about the sound is it gets louder, right? But it sort of is the same timbre. So if I wanted to change the timbre, right? See, this is where what I'm trying to get you to start thinking about now is how to animate the music you make. And you animate the music you make using some of the techniques we learned with automation, right? With the like when we were doing stuff with Expand, a few of you automated the filter. And here on this one, we're automating where the echo comes in on the guitar. I showed you how to do that a little bit, which is kind of cool. But there, you can automate so many things. And a human being that plays an instrument, they animate that sound when a violinist has their left hand on that string. That finger is vibrating that note. at different intensities, which creates a different timbre. They're taking their right hand, and the hair of the bow is going across the string, and depending upon the pressure they apply to that string with the bow, or how slow or fast they move the bow, it changes the timbre. But they can do that in real time. They can animate a single note and make it sound like an entire epic event just by their technique. Well, you can simulate that inside of the DAW. So what we're going to do is we're going to start, and I've talked about this before. So let's go to Avid, and we're going to get our EQ3 one band. And we're going to actually simulate a high frequency, a low pass filter, and we're going to sweep it. Okay, so the two filters here in this is a one band EQ. You notice there's only one dot here for one frequency band. If I were to put in the, this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it has a high pass filter and a low pass filter. So this has 7 bands. It's a little complicated for where we are right now. So we start in simple and we build. So the two types of EQ that we're going to talk about and use is a high pass, and this is a high pass. So remember, on this frequency graph, the lower pitches are on the left, just like on a piano, and the higher pitches are on the right, just like a piano. And then at the bottom of the graph is the softer sounds, and as you go up, the volume gets louder. So when we look at this here, to the left, that means it's bringing down the volume of everything on the left, which means on the right, all those are passing through unaffected. So that's high. The high frequencies are passing through. So this is a high pass filter, which does exactly what it says it does, which is pass through the high frequencies. Actually, let me move this so that my face is not. No, let me just get out of the way, actually. Okay, I don't need to be in here for this. Sorry about that. So this lets the and this attenuates the high frequencies. It does the opposite. So to select one of these, you just click on it. And it tells you the type right here: low pass, high pass, notch, high shelf, peak, low shelf. Don't worry about these other ones. That's not for this class. High pass. And what you have here is the slope of the filter, right? On the high pass. And we're going to use a low pass filter. The slope. So this is 12 decibels per octave. So from here up the next octave, it reduces the volume by 12 decibels. The next octave after that, 12 more decibels. I'm going to click and drag this down so that it's 6 decibels, and you'll see the slope gets more gentle. See that? And if I click and bring it all the way up to 24, it's 6, 12, 18, and 24. You see it's very sharp. We're going to keep it at 12. That's or we'll try 6. And then your frequency. You see, if I bring it down, this blue area, from this point forward, there should be no frequencies audible. And each one of the frequencies here is brought down by 6 decibels per octave. And the curve starts a little bit before where the break point here is. But you can automate this and move it like this, right? So the way you do that is to go up to where it says auto here, and you click on this. And you'll see here frequency. So highlight that and add that. Hit OK. And now if we go here to our track view selector, click, you'll see that there's now a lane for the EQ3 one band frequency. So if I use am I still on my pencil tool? Yes. So what I could do now is I can make this start off very dark and make it get brighter, and then make it get darker as it fades out. So I'm going to solo that and then watch this move and listen. Right, I'm going to make that even more extreme. maybe not so much the second time. So now you don't even notice the stiff keyboard playing, right? And what's cool about it is when you get to the end here, it almost sounds like an echo off in the distance. Da, 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 right? It's really cool. Whoops. And then we can duplicate this. Why not? Why not? That was cool. I loved it. You might have to go back and work on the automation points here. Let's see. So let's see. Just that dropped off a little bit too quickly. So what we can do is we can go back and do our automation here with our delay and just have the delay come in for that last note. Doesn't really. Let me see something here. So I'm going to copy that and I'm going to do something else here. I'm going to try a different way to make that audible. Okay, so I've done that there and I'm going to do this. I've got audio volume, right? And I'm going to fade that out with audio volume. Great. And then I'm also going to, I'm going to put this EQ3 one band in here. And what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to do a low pass filter. I'm going to leave it, I'm going to make it pretty dark. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to automate the master bypass. So the bypass means it's either on or off. Let me show you what I mean. So you see that also, you see this turns green. That means it's automation enabled. So let me go here. Okay, so let me go way back to the beginning. So it's bypassed now. You'll see it's brown with the orange with the lime green. And then I can turn it on here after this, and it will make what's... make it a little bit brighter. So you see what I'm doing? I'm simulating echo and here by playing around with this, by copying and pasting this in a rhythmically, just that little bit, and then I'm using the filter to EQ to give you this sort of a similar effect. And now I can, you know, that can make that a little bit louder. Maybe it fades out a little too quickly. Yeah, there you go. Right? That's pretty cool if you ask me. Don't ask me. What do I know I'm talking? You think I know what I'm talking about? Just kidding. Actually, let's put that there and there. And then let's see, what else is there? There's... Great. So now, we're going to go to a different chord, right? And we need to make sure that we bypass our... Oh, great. It copied that it was bypassed. Did you see that? Now, little tip. You see how the bypass comes in right there? That might make a click if it happens right when the audio bit happens. So you might want to just have it start a little bit earlier. Right, so we can do the same thing, right? It's similar, very similar idea. And we'll copy this note here, I believe. Let's see, so that's happening, right. And what I'm going to do is, this is kind of cool, is that you can copy that volume automation and paste it in, right? And it doesn't affect the audio underneath. And you can also copy the master bypass thingy and paste that in as well. It doesn't affect the audio. So now what I've done is right, so you see how like I'm transforming this into something, taking those raw materials and really working them in a way that I think is pretty. I mean, it's not Stravinsky, it's not Coltrane, but it works. I just duplicated this bit here. Oops, sorry. And then maybe, you know, you did that little playing around with the guitar. Maybe now you can have a full bit of the guitar. I don't know, you could add a Montuno like that if you wanted. Oh, hold on 1 second. Excuse me. Touched my expression pedal. Something like that. I don't know. Nope. Right. I'm just working this. I don't, you know, I'm just fooling around. And then maybe I'll transpose this one down an octave. I don't like the way this just cuts off. I'm going to fade that out. I don't like that either. Might have to do something to mask that. Like they have those bell trees or something like that. Right? The transitions need help sometimes, you know, to cover up. I don't like the way that abruptly ends. I would have to do something to mask that a little bit to cover it up, come up with something. You know what you could do? Okay, this will be a little bit more complex. I showed you guys a little bit of this in digital recording and comp too. So I'm going to do Command Shift N. I'm going to do this. I'm going to import audio. And I'm going to find a snare drum. Actually, let me just find snare. I can audition the sound by clicking the play. Nope. Hold on a second. I have in my sample library. I have something that like, I have all sorts of drum hits, right? So if I go to drum loops, these are things that I've purchased or I've created. So I could go to something like this. Single hits, right? So I have a snare here. This is the loudest one. Exactly. So I'm going to copy this in. Good. And I'm going to put it in a new track at the selection. That means it'll be right there. All right. So that's pretty cool. Now, there's something here where you go to Audio Suite, which will be a destructive edit. And I can pick reverse, right? And I'm just going to render that. Now I've got this. Okay, so that's pretty cool, right? So let me bring this. Oh, the delay and the reverb should be at the bottom. Let me see where that bit is that I don't like. So that's at the end of measure 4. So if I highlight this, check this out. This is another thing that's really cool. You have spot mode, which is right up here. So if you click on that, it becomes yellow. Use your grabber, click on this, and then you could just type in measure 4 here. Whoops, excuse me. Measure 4, whoops. There we go, hit enter. And now if I go to measure 4, it's like Lucky Charms. It's magically delicious. It got moved right to measure 4, and then I could just place it here. Whoops, I have to go back to slip mode and place it so that it ends here. Right there. And then I will put copious amounts of reverb on that. Yeah, hold on a second. Give me 1 second. Let me redo that. Bus 1 and 2. And then I think I should just do a little fade out here at the end so that we don't get a click. I mean, and you could also, if you really wanted to, add some of the delay onto that too. Yeah, this should really start right at that point too, the drums. That'll help also to mask it. right? Another 45 seconds of these and my final would be finished and I'd give myself an A or an A+. But anyway, seriously though, I'm just trying to show you some techniques, give you some ideas. A lot of this stuff comes down to you playing around, and just trying something. If it doesn't work, just undo it. If the automation doesn't work, just take the send out, right? I did that. When if you don't like the automation on this, just remove the send. Just remove the send here and put it in again. It'll tell you that, it'll give you a warning about removing the automation. Well, you want to get rid of it anyway, so just get rid of it. It's not a big deal.